Come in, my love. It's nice to see you. I'm Nadie, and welcome to the Useless Knowledge Club, a compilation of bite-sized tidbits, real stories, and folklore from around the world. It's everything you never knew you needed. You're welcome. This guy strapped rockets to a lawn chair and actually took off. He wanted to go flying, so he tied 45 weather balloons to a lawn chair and said, well, what's the worst that could happen? In 1982, Larry Walter, a 33-year-old truck driver from California, decided he was done dreaming about flying. Flight school was expensive as hell and air balloons were for rich people. So Larry did what any rational lunatic would do. He went to a military surplus store, bought 45 helium weather balloons, and tied them to a $110 Sears lawn chair. He packed sandwiches, beer, and a pellet gun to shoot the balloons when it was time to descend. He was thinking. The plan was simple. He'd float a few hundred feet up, drift over the desert, and then shoot down a few balloons to land gracefully. The execution, however, was pure freaking chaos. When his friends cut the tether, Larry shot up like a human missile, 4,000 feet, then 8,000, then 16,000 in the air. He soared right into the flight path of commercial jets over Los Angeles. Pilots were radioing the tower saying, "You're not going to believe this, but there's a guy in a lawn chair with a gun up here." Larry floated for nearly 14 hours before slowly descending by shooting a few balloons. The landing was a little bit less graceful. He snagged on power lines, blacked out an entire neighborhood, and was immediately arrested. I guess when reporters asked why he did it, Larry gave one of the greatest quotes in human history: "Man can't just sit around." He became a national hero, a late-night punchline, and an accidental aviation legend. His lawn chair now sits in the Smithsonian right next to a real aircraft. So next time someone tells you to aim higher, remember Larry did. And the FAA fined him $1,500 for it. This dude got hit in the head and became a math genius. One minute he's a bartender, next minute he's solving equations that stump college professors. In 2002, 31-year-old Jason was mugged outside a karaoke bar in Tacoma, Washington. The attacker slammed his head against the pavement hard enough to cause a serious concussion. He was lucky to be alive, except lucky doesn't really cover what happened next. When Jason came to, the world looked a little bit different. Every surface shimmered with geometry like the Matrix. Ripples in water became fractional patterns. The edges of objects glowed with mathematical symmetry. He couldn't explain it, but suddenly he understood math, concepts he'd never studied before. Before the attack, Jason barely passed high school algebra. Relatable. After it, he could visualize complex geometric shapes in his head. He began sketching them compulsively. Perfect renderings of pi, e, and wave functions. His notebooks looked like they'd been ripped out of a quantum physics textbook. Doctors, who were a little bit jealous, were just like, what the hell? Neuropsychologists scanned his brain and discovered hyperactivity in the region responsible for mathematical reasoning and visual imagery. The trauma had apparently rewired his neurons to create acquired savant syndrome, a freaking incredibly rare condition where a brain injury unlocks dormant, extraordinary abilities. You know, like flying. Okay, I don't know about that. Unfortunately, though, it wasn't all genius and glory. Jason also developed crippling OCD, paranoia, and social anxiety. For years, he barely left his house, terrified of germs and noise. I would be too. He can literally see the germs and the noise frequencies. But his obsession with geometry became his lifeline. Eventually, he studied mathematics formally and began lecturing at universities, showing his art, describing how he literally sees equations everywhere. His story became a book and a movie deal, but Jason still jokes, if I could go back, I'd tell those guys to hit me slightly less hard. Turns out getting your head smashed might make you smarter, but it's one hell of a way to skip math class. Get this, there was a guy who robbed a bank using a live seagull. So picture this, it's 1956 in England and a man named Derek Smalls decides to rob a bank in a way that no one saw coming. Instead of a gun, a mask, or I don't know, a functioning plan, he brought a seagull, like a real wild-ass seagull. This dude walks into Barclays branch with a bird perched on his shoulder like a shitty pirate. He slams his fist on the counter and demands cash. He claims that the bird was trained to attack on command. I guess if you're gonna bluff, go big or go home, but unfortunately for him, the bird was not trained. It was just a pissed off coastal bird Derek had somehow kidnapped from a dock. And the only thing it attacked was him. Like mid-robbery, this chaotic little feathered bastard freaked out, flapped directly into Derek's face, knocked his hat off, and pooped all over the counter. The teller cackling, snapping, living for it, the customers clapping, Derek absolutely losing his mind. In the commotion, he slipped on his own spilled loot bag and got tackled by two elderly men who had just come in to deposit their pension checks. The bird flew the hell out of there like it was gonna go audition for the birds, and Derek was arrested and charged with attempted robbery and illegal possession of wildlife. I didn't even know that was a thing, but I guess it makes sense. During the trial, when asked what the hell he was thinking, he said, Well, I thought it would be more intimidating than a knife. It wasn't. It was a seagull. They're like rats with wings, aren't they? And now his legacy lives on as the dumbest damn attempt at avian-assisted crime in British history. A man who outsmarted the Nazis with paint? Critics hated his art, so he forged masterpieces, sold them to celebrities, and became a national hero by accident. In the 1930s, Dutch painter Han van Meeringen was sick of being dismissed as a talentless hack. So he came up with a revenge plan worthy of an art world soap opera. He'd forged newly discovered works by Johannes Vermeer and not lazy copies. He used 17th century canvases, mixed his own pigments, and even baked the paintings in an oven to make them look centuries old. It worked way too well. Art experts declared his forgeries authentic. Museums bought them. Wealthy collectors fought over them. His crowning achievement? Selling one to Nazi bigwig Hermann Göring during World War II for a freaking fortune. Meegeren was arrested for treason for selling Dutch cultural treasures to the enemy. But in court, he dropped the mic. He hadn't betrayed his country. He said he'd conned the Nazis. To prove it, he forged another Vermeer right there in front of the investigators. Charges were dropped, and the man, once mocked as a fraud, became a national legend. Van Meegeren died in 1947, smug and satisfied, having pulled off one of the greatest art scams in history, and proving that sometimes revenge really is a masterpiece. Barbie is back, and so is her baggage. Yes, Barbie's getting a sequel, and this time she's bringing more glitter, more trauma, and maybe a little bit less pink. But is it pink? Greta Gerwig is back. Ryan Gosling said he's ready to can again, and the internet is already panic debating. Will it be darker? Will it be sadder? Will Barbie finally unionize? But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's talk about how Barbie even became Barbie. Because sis has had a wild ride. She was born in 1959, plastic blonde, permanently on her tiptoes, and originally marketed as a teen fashion model. Her full name, Barbara Millicent Roberts, which sounds less like an icon and more like your mom's book club bestie who sells essential oils. She wore a black and white swimsuit, had zero nipples or genitalia, and came with exactly one career option: looking hot. Relatable. By the 1960s, she finally got her first car, then a dream house, then a boyfriend named Ken who looked like a handsome drywall sample. But the backlash kind of started early. People said she promoted unrealistic beauty standards. Her waist was so tiny that if she were real, she couldn't even digest food. Her feet shaped for stilettos. Only stilettos. Like always. Ballet flats? Freaking illegal. A comfortable slip-on? Bitch wear. But then Barbie said, fine, y'all want range? And the bitch snapped. In the 1980s, she became a CEO. In the 90s, she was a presidential candidate. And then by the 2000s, she was an astronaut, a vet, a doctor, Olympic gymnast, and probably doing her taxes better than us. She's been through every political era, trend cycle, and economic collapse, and somehow she always bounces back with a new job and a matching outfit. But the real glow-up? 2023's Barbie movie. Because Greta Gerwig didn't just give us a fun little girl power romp, she gave us an existential breakdown in hot pink. Suddenly, Barbie was questioning reality, crying on benches, and wondering if she had a soul. We walked into theaters expecting dance numbers, and we left asking, am I enough without a career? Do I have cellulite? Is Ken okay? And while we don't know the plot yet, one thing's for sure, Barbie isn't just plastic anymore. She's a mirror, a legacy, a complicated queen trying to navigate modern feminism in a world that still thinks she's just tits in Malibu. So yeah, Barbie's back, and this time she's not just dreaming, she's plotting. You go, girl. When a mysterious billionaire ruler rolled into Vegas flashing diamonds and gold, the casinos bent over backwards, only to find out he was broke. Let me introduce to you Anthony, the man who spent decades pretending to be royalty. He styled himself as Prince Khalid bin Al Saud, supposedly part of Saudi royal family. He drove a Rolls Royce with diplomatic plates, had bodyguards, and wore a $100,000 Rolex. He'd check into five-star hotels, demand presidential suites, and rack up insane room service bills, and they let him because, hey, he's a prince, right? Wrong. Anthony was born in Colombia, raised in Michigan, and had absolutely zero ties to Saudi royalty, but his scam was so good, like really good. He even had fake diplomatic immunity papers, forged bank letters showing billions in assets, and a crew of cronies who acted like his entourage. The guy committed to the bit, down to adopting a fake accent and wearing traditional robes. His game was simple. He'd approach luxury businesses or investors, offer to buy big ticket items like yachts or hotels, you name it, and then promise to wire transfer from his offshore accounts, which never came. I guess he even tried to buy the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami for $440 million using forged documents and a whole lot of charm, and for a while it worked, but what tripped him up? Real Saudi royalty don't eat pork, and when this prince ordered bacon-wrapped shrimp, they got a little bit suspicious. One call to the actual Saudi embassy and the whole scam started unraveling. Turns out Anthony had been pulling cons like this since the 1980s, racking up fraud convictions and jail time along the way. But this little Vegas trip turned out to be the death of his career. The FBI brought the hammer down in 2017, and now he's serving over 18 years in federal prison. Sometimes a guy in robes is just a guy in robes, and if your billionaire client orders bacon with a side of bullshit, maybe double check his passport. He sold a whole country that didn't even exist, and people lined up to buy tickets. Meet Gregor McGregor. What a fabulous freaking name. He was a smooth-talking Scottish soldier with more confidence than credibility. In the 1820s, he returned from Latin America with a wild claim. He was the Cazique of Poyet, a ruler of a lush Central American paradise brimming with fertile land, gold deposits, and opportunity. Basically, the Airbnb listing of your dreams. McGregor printed glossy pamphlets complete with maps, fake currency, and a constitution that sounded fancier than most European nations had at the time. Investors drooled, settlers packed their trunks, and London's money men shoveled fortunes his way. It was the 19th century version of selling NFTs, just shinier with fewer monkeys. Then came reality. The first settlers who actually voyaged to Poyet discovered jungle. No infrastructure, no riches, no strip clubs, no bustling cities. Just mosquitoes. So many freaking mosquitoes. Lots of disease and the creeping realization that they'd been conned by a man with a fabulous mustache. Many died, others limped home, and McGregor, he waltzed off to France to run the same exact scam again. Because once you've conned people with an entire imaginary kingdom, why stop? Do it again, hell! When the law did finally catch up with him, McGregor did the tiniest amount of jail time and somehow managed to slither out with his reputation pretty much intact. He even returned to Venezuela, where officials gave him a pension and a hero's burial. Yes, a man who sold nowhere land ended up honored like a freaking war hero. Sounds like an American thing to do. So, if you think modern day scams are wild, remember, 2 centuries ago, a guy conned investors out of millions by selling them beachfront property in Narnia. Before clickbait was ever a thing, Edgar Allan Poe went viral with a fake story about crossing the Atlantic in a balloon. In 1844, the New York Sun published a jaw-dropping front-page article written by Edgar Allan Poe. It claimed that 2 daring Englishmen had made history by crossing the Atlantic Ocean in just 75 hours in a hot air balloon. The story was dramatic, detailed, and sounded just believable enough to set the public on fire. God, people were gullible back then. People flooded the streets, newspapers sold out, and investors started daydreaming about balloon-powered transatlantic travel. Tiny issue though, he made it all up. It wasn't a mistake either, it was a deliberate hoax. Poe wanted to prove how easily the public could be duped by a story that sounded just scientific enough. And mama, did he prove his point. The article fooled just about everyone before the paper sheepishly admitted that it was fiction a couple days later. Instead of ruining his reputation, the stunt boosted it. Poe cemented his ass as not just a master of macabre fiction, but also as one of the OG trolls of journalism. It was a 19th century. Poe cemented his ass as not just a master of macabre fiction, but also as one of the OG trolls of journalism. This grandma outsmarted the entire art world. She painted fake masterpieces in her kitchen and sold them for millions. Meet Wolfgang and Helene Beltracchi. They were a quiet German couple who looked like your typical bohemian retirees, linen clothes, messy hair, and a studio that smelled like turpentine and herbal tea. But Helene had a gift. She could forge anything. From the 1990s through the early 2000s, she painted over 300 lost works by famous artists. And then her husband would sell them through fake estates, complete with forged provenance papers, fabricated old photos, and coffee-stained letters from collectors. The secret? She didn't copy existing paintings, she invented new ones that could plausibly fit into each artist's body of work. Experts, museums, and auction houses all fell for it. One fake sold for $2.5 million, and this shit went on for decades. The Beltracchis lived like royalty, yachts, villas, vintage wine, until 2010 when one of her masterpieces was tested and found to contain a pigment that didn't exist in the 1920s. Oopsie doopsie. They were arrested, and during the trial, Helene admitted she actually loved the artists she forged. She called it collaboration across time. Critics still say her work was too good to dismiss completely. When a reporter asked if she regretted it, she smiled and said, "Not really. I gave them new paintings and they gave me a fortune." Honestly, icon. They were hailed as Stone Age cave dwellers until it turned out they were just regular farmers from down the street in loincloths. In 1971, the world went absolutely bananas over the discovery of the Tazidae, a small group in the Philippines supposedly living in total isolation, untouched by modern life. Anthropologists and journalists were whisked into the rainforest where they found barefoot people in leaf loincloths, eating roots and fruits, speaking a unique language, and living in caves like a living museum of prehistory. Headlines screamed, "A Stone Age tribe in the 20th century, wow!" The Marcos regime milked the discovery for all it was worth, parading the Tazidae as proof of the nation's cultural treasures. National Geographic ran a big-ass glossy spread, TV specials aired, and the tribe became a global sensation. They were marketed kind of like a prehistoric Disneyland with just enough mystery to make it irresistible. But when Marcos fell from power in the mid-1980s, investigators returned to the rainforest and, surprise, the Tazidae weren't cave-dwelling primitives at all. They were ordinary farmers from nearby villages, allegedly bribed and pressured by officials to play cavemen for the cameras. Their ancient language was just a dialect variation, their stone tools suspiciously fresh, and their whole lost tribe lifestyle, that was just a government-backed stunt. Today, debate still lingers over just how complicit the Tazidae were and how much of the scam was orchestrated above their heads. But one thing's clear, the greatest discovery wasn't a Stone Age tribe, it was how badly people wanted to believe in one. So the Tazidae weren't proof of human prehistory. They were proof that even in anthropology, people will fake it if you pay them enough. Rihanna's, I guess, finally making music again, but she's not the first to disappear at her peak and leave us begging. Let's be real, it's been, what, like 9 years since Auntie? And while we were rewatching her Super Bowl performance over and over and over again like it was evidence at a trial, she was out building a billion-dollar empire, birthing babies, and casually redefining the word booked. Now she's back in the studio and we're like, oh, we're doing music again? Cool, I forgot what your voice even sounds like. But here's the thing, she's not alone. Pop history is full of divas, legends, and tortured geniuses who dropped a masterpiece and then ghosted like a toxic ex with really good eyebrows. Let's start with the queen of musical vanishing acts, Lauryn Hill. She gave us The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill in 1998, a record that won like 5 Grammys. It changed the game and basically became a religion. Oh my god, I love that album. Then, poof, she vanished into poetry readings, lateness, tax problems, and mystery. People waited decades, they were still waiting. But she's slowly kind of creeping back, and at this point, even if she released a voicemail, it would hit #1 because we're all desperate for something new from her. There's Sade, a woman so unbothered she took a 10-year break between albums, and when she came back, still flawless, still ageless, still sounding like melted silk dipped in wine. She's the only person allowed to go radio silent for a decade and then say, I was gardening. And then we have to mention Frank Ocean. He dropped Channel Orange and the world cried, the gays levitated, then he ghosted. Then he dropped Endless, but it was literally a video of him building stairs, like real stairs, for 45 minutes. And we watched it like it was the fucking moon landing. Oh, and Kate Bush, she invented the disappearing act. She released a string of masterpieces, then retreated into her English mansion like a musical witch. No press, no shows, just vibes. Then remember Stranger Things that brought her back like a pop seance. So yeah, when Rihanna took her little hiatus, she was just joining a club of the elite musical Houdinis. Artists who said, I gave you greatness, now wait. And let's be honest, we do. We wait very patiently, I think. We meme, we scream, where's the fucking album? But we still show up the second they drop 15 seconds of anything. Because, honey, the longer they disappear, the louder we listen when they come back. She showed up barefoot, claimed she was royalty, and the British elite believed every word. It's England in 1817, and a young woman wandered into the village of Almondsbury. She's wearing strange and exotic clothes, speaks in a language no one recognizes, and seems completely lost. The townspeople are baffled. They haul her to the local magistrate, where she continues to speak in bizarre syllables and gestures like she's in some silent film from hell. She keeps pointing to herself and repeating the word Caribou. Eventually, pieces fall together, kind of. She claims she's Princess Caribou, Caribou, royal from the faraway island of Havasu. She says she was kidnapped by pirates, leapt off their ship, and swam to freedom. And instead of saying, girl, be serious, the upper class people, they say, oh, you poor thing, let's throw you a partay. I wouldn't mind that. For the next 10 weeks, they treated this woman like she was actual foreign royalty. Nobles host banquets, artists paint her portrait. The newspapers called her the exotic princess, which oddly enough is my stripper name when I take one of those tests. She prays in a made-up language. She draws fictional maps. What doesn't she do? See if she could eat a Hot Pocket out of the microwave. That would be impressive. She even wears a turban and does these dramatic bowing rituals as if she weren't serving up a heaping pot of Delulu, and it works. Queen Charlotte herself even sent money to support the so-called princess, but then the spell breaks. A boarding house owner in Bristol sees the coverage and goes, wait, that's not a princess, that's Mary Baker from 4th Street. Turns out Princess Caribou wasn't royal, wasn't foreign, and definitely wasn't shipwrecked. She was just the unemployed daughter of a cobbler. She loved reading adventure novels and decided one day, screw it, I'm royalty now. I've totally had days like that too, girl. I get it. She invented the entire thing, the clothes, the language, the country, the pirate story, all fabricated. No internet, no partner in crime, just a big old fat gold star for imagination. And when the truth got out, the press totally turned. Nobles were humiliated. The queen cut off the checkbook. But here's the gag. Mary really wasn't punished. In fact, public opinion was weirdly impressed. People were like, she scammed the richest people in England with a turban and a fake accent? Like, damn girl, kind of iconic. Snaps to you. And instead of jail, they shipped her off to America. Basically a diplomatic way of saying, bye Felicia. And then in the States, she made money touring in a show as Princess Caribou. Wow! Years later, she returned to England, lived out her life quietly under her real name, and died in 1864. But she left behind one hell of a legacy. The broken housemaid who had Queen Charlotte writing checks to a country that didn't even exist. No gun, no poison, no blood on her hands, just charisma, some costume design, and the boldest improv performance in British history. Well, now you know, and thank you for spending your time here at the Useless Knowledge Club. If you'd like to continue collecting useless information with me, follow along on all my socials at Official Nady. Have a beautiful day and stay unnecessarily curious.